Hey everyone, hope you're all doing well, staying safe, staying healthy. I wanted to make this video just to go over some other polls, kind of continuing on my, kind of Wednesday polling series. Previous video covered Andrew Cuomo and Chuck Schumer, Kristen Gillibrand, New York state level politicians, and how they have been faring in the recent Marist poll that was released yesterday. Right now, I want to go over some polls that have come out recently with regards to former President Trump and current President Joe Biden. So this really interesting poll was released recently, earlier this week, by Suffolk University. They conducted this poll from last week, over the course of last week, and it found some interesting results that I would say are to be relatively expected. And they kind of confirm the many other polls that have been released in the past several weeks that continue to show former President Trump's continued grip on the Republican Party. As many of you, I'm sure, have heard, former President Trump is expected to speak at CPAC this coming Sunday, where I've heard rumors, some reporting saying that he is going to claim continued leadership over the GOP. So we will have to see how that speech is this coming Sunday and what are the general reactions by Republican politicians and Republican voters to that speech. But what's so interesting about this poll is that it kind of continues what we found in other types of polls. So I thought this was interesting because it looks at just Trump voters. So I looked at the crosstabs of this, and it's not just Republicans. It also includes independent voters along with Democratic voters Democratic registered voters who happen to vote for President Trump back in 2020. And it shows that if Trump decided to form a third party, 46% of Trump voters would support the Trump party, 27% would back the Republican Party, and 27% would be undecided to where they stand between the two. And to be honest, this is definitely got a few headlines I saw in like USA Today, for example. But I would say that this number is actually kind of surprisingly low when you consider these are Trump voters. These aren't just, Republicans, right? Like as a whole, this is those voters that specifically voted for Trump. And, it's telling. This is Wall Street Journal has conducted several polls that, basically show this ratio that within the, I think that this is still for Trump voters as a whole. But when they ask, where do you feel your loyalty to, 54% Donald Trump, 34% the Republican Party. Wall Street Journal has conducted polls where they ask people of the Republican Party specifically, how do you feel about, your allegiances? Do you believe yourself to be more of a party member, or do you view yourself as being affiliated with Donald Trump more so than the Republican Party as a whole? And those have generally in recent years been around a 20-point margin in favor of Trump, but that's within the Republican Party. So to be honest, I'm surprised that among Donald Trump voters specifically, it's not a higher number than this. But still, it shows that Trump has a command among his the party faithful and the voters that voted for him back in 2020. Still largely undeterred by the events of January 6th, which I would personally consider at the very least a riot, most likely a domestic terror attack, and for that matter, an insurrection, which I think most of the media has kind of claimed it to be as such. But you look at these poll numbers, and 6 in 10 voters believe that the January 6th storming of the Capitol was mostly an Antifa-inspired event. Despite there being no evidence in supporting that claim, it is complete garbage. There's no evidence to support this. Don't take it just from Suffolk University, take it from everyone from the Donald Trump supporters themselves, who say that they were sorry, not Donald Trump supporters, the rioters that were there that happened to be Donald Trump supporters who claimed that they were following what they believed to be directions from Donald Trump. And for that matter, all of the rest of, the media and of course I should say the establishment media, for better or worse, and for that matter, all agencies that have reviewed attacks on the Capitol. Um, you know, this 6 in 10 voters are frankly just believing false claims by Trump, false claims by his acolytes, and false claims by the far right media that have propagated this claim that is just frankly not true. But again, looking at 2024, 6 in 10 said they would like to see him run for president, and 76% said that they would vote for him if he sought the Republican nomination. Of course, some of those voters are not in the Republican Party. Some are Democrats, some are independents, and some of them would, as a result, not be able to vote in a closed party system. Um, but it's still telling to show how much of a hold that he has on the party. And there have been some other polls that show this, and I wanted to just bring this up because it's interesting. Just like when we try to suss out the difference, like yes, there are Trump voters. However, when we look and we're looking at the Republican Party as a whole, it is important to remember that there is still a minority, very small minority, who did not vote for him. And a slightly larger minority, I would say probably 15 to 20%, who, either voted for him or did not vote for him that are not fans of Trump. I would say that there are many Republicans that voted for Trump not because they liked him, but because he wasn't a Democrat, because he wasn't Joe Biden, and because, generally speaking, his political ideology aligned more with theirs than Joe Biden did. And then you have someone like me who is a member of the Republican Party who falls in this, I guess, 1% that did not vote for either candidates, that voted third party. And I assume it also includes people who voted third party and not for Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And then there was this political poll that came out early last week, I believe taken between February 14th and 15th, that shows his continued grip on the party. Again, similar to the Suffolk poll. When you look at there, almost every single demographic and political group does not want Trump to play a major or minor role in the Republican Party. The only groups that do want him to play are kind of expectedly are Republicans and conservatives. Obviously a lot of overlap between the two groups. I am both a Republican and a conservative who falls strongly into this category. I would not like him to see him play a role in the Republican Party. But that's where we are. And when you look at, they also did a poll, again, super early, but they did a poll on, if the primary were being held today, who would you vote for? And of course, this includes like registered voters and, some people who may not be independents, who may not be able to actually vote in the Republican primary. However, when you look at it among those who are Republicans, 54% say Trump, and then the rest of the vote is divided between a bunch of other potential candidates, with Mike Pence performing the strongest. So again, it just goes to show Trump still has command of the Republican Party, and that's probably how it's going to be for at least a little bit longer. My hope is that eventually that grip fades, but Trump has shown remarkable resiliency with his polling numbers in with regards to the Republican Party. I mean, in fact, even in the direct aftermath of the January 6th riot insurrection, his poll numbers they plunged to his worst of his presidency. But even among Republicans, the average generally had his numbers around 80%, which is a dip from his, I think it was roughly around 90% before the riots but they dipped, but not as much as you would think, considering that he helped inspire a an attack on the U.S. Capitol. So, short answer for all this is that he has a grip on the party, and again, this is a poll from the Hill slash Harris X poll from January 28th to 29th that shows among GOP voters he is very popular, and they would support by a 64% to 36% margin, more or less in line with what we've seen in other polls, to start a MAGA or Patriot Party inspired by Trump. In conclusion, just wanted to cap off on just a little bit of like a weekly tracker for Joe Biden. His numbers remain stable. They remain strong, 16-point margin in favor here from 538, which is basically the same as it was last week. In Real Clear Politics, they have the tracker here showing about a narrowing of around 1 point. But again, still strong approval ratings. The Economist YouGov poll that I'm about to pull up, it did show a notable decrease, I guess, from a plus 15-point margin last week to a plus 11, with most of that being a drop in his, or all of it being a drop in his approval rating from 55 to 51%, but still strong. When we look in these crosstabs, you can see he enjoys nearly universal approval from Democrats, split approval from independents at about a 45 to 42 point margin for 3 points net approval rating. And then among Republicans, pretty poor, but much better than what, for example, Trump had among Democrats towards the end of his presidency, or throughout his presidency for that matter. As you can see, like when you look at these not sure numbers, they're still pretty high for Republicans and independents, more higher than what I would expect them to be, especially among Republicans. So again, as I said in my previous video, I do expect that as time goes on, as people have the chance to, process the Joe Biden presidency, that those numbers will eventually kind of like fall back into their camps. These 16% approval rating numbers from Republicans will probably dip to something more like 10%. This number here will probably fall mostly into the somewhat or strongly disapproved category. And as a result, you're going to have these this current approval rating disapproval margin probably move from a net 15-point margin in favor of Biden right now to something more in the 5 to 10-point range in the coming months. And in conclusion, there nothing super special about the polls this week with regards to Biden. I think one thing that's been in the news that we should cover is about the support for the COVID-19 relief bill that the Democrats are passing or are expected to pass this weekend or Friday. It's an extremely popular bill at the moment. Again, a lot of this depends on how you word the polls and how much voters have actually been able to read deep into the content of the poll. But you look at this at face value, do you support or oppose the 1.9 trillion COVID relief bill? 68 points in favor, 25 points against. That's a huge margin in approval. Even among Republicans, 39% approval to 50% against, which is pretty good considering they're the opposition party. Extremely high levels of approval for the stimulus checks, 79% to 16%, with a majority of Republicans approving of it. So, again, you look into a little bit of the other areas of the bill and you see a little bit of, a little bit more contentious policies like raising the minimum wage. But for the most part, this is still a bill that is very much supported by the American populace. And while I would like to see tweakings of the bill, I do think that we do need another stimulus or relief bill to kind of get us through the next couple of months before, June or so this summer. The economy is able to more fully reopen up and the free market is able to kind of take control of things and get us back to normal. on normal economic footing. But this goes to show that I do think that the Republicans are in a little bit of a box when it comes to this bill, because they are most likely, because the Democrats don't really seem to want to compromise at all on this. They will most likely vote in mass against the bill. Maybe the Democrats pull one or two Republicans in either the House or the Senate to vote for it, and they can label it as a quote unquote bipartisan bill. But right now, it's looking pretty unlikely that that's going to happen, and that it will have to be a party line vote in favor of it. Which it'll be interesting to see how the politics bear out, because in 20 in '09, when Obama was trying to get his um, relief bill passed, the public did show widespread approval for it. And many people faulted the Republicans for not really going along in the bill. But ultimately, you saw a wave election in 2010 when you combined that bill with perceived overreach with regards to Obamacare and other types of programs that the Democrats wanted to push through. So it's way too early to tell how 2022 is going to look. It's all pure speculation. But it'll be definitely one of the things we look back on in mid-late November of 2022, when we look back to this moment and we say, oh, well, the Republicans got punished badly for opposing this COVID relief bill. Or, well, these polls, while they may be true, voters seem not to really care, and they ended up viewing the relief package in a much more negative light come the midterm election. So we'll just have to see exactly how people break down on their preferences come 2022. But for right now, this is Joe Biden remains popular. His COVID relief plan remains pretty popular, and we'll have to see how Republicans get treated for their opposition to the bill. So anyways, I'll conclude it on that note. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch. As always, please feel free to comment, subscribe, give any suggestions. Happy to make a video on one of your on what you're thinking about, and any kind of thoughts that you may have with regards to politics and public policy. Thanks again for watching. Have a good day. Bye.